This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, October the 16th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. Let's get it going. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 86-26. So you know I'm digging in with the Toronto Blue Jays. Big win and a must-win last night in Seattle in Game 3. 13-4 victory. I mean, baseball is a weird game, as Dave Williams pointed out. Couldn't get a hit, couldn't do anything in Games 1 and 2 and explode last night. 8 home runs hit in the game, 5 off Blue Jay bats. And Seattle's T-Mobile Park is a big ballpark. It's hard to hit one out of that particular baseball field, but 8 flew over the fence last night. So trailing in the series 2-1. Back at it tonight, but it's a 10 o'clock start. It's going to kill me. Anyway, viewership numbers are huge. The Jays have one of the biggest fan bases in Major League Baseball. So in Game 1 of the ALCS, the average viewers combined 10.02 million. The breakdown, 5.31 million Americans watched it, 4.71 million Canadians watched it. So people are digging the baseball and the Blue Jays. All right, this is it's a fabulous look back at World Series past. 56 years ago today, in 1969, the Miracle Mets won the World Series, and they were facing a heavily favored Baltimore Orioles team. In the 7 previous seasons, the Mets had never finished higher than 9th place, routinely lost 100 games, but starting in May, the Mets delivered a record of 82-39. They won 38 of their last 49 games, finished 8 games ahead of the Cubbies. The second worst hitting team ever to win the World Series in that half century. They did it with the pitching. So let's see here. Tom Seaver, who won 25 games that year to win the Cy Young. Also a young Nolan Ryan was on that team. They pitched 28 shutouts that year. Put for context, in the past 100 years, only one team tallied more shutouts than the 1969 Mets. And they beat the Orioles, the Miracle Mets. Pretty wild. All right, what's this scribble? Oh, Dave likes a good stat, and he likes a good Tony Gwynn stat. Here you go, Dave, this one's for you. Listen to these 4 pitchers. John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, Greg Maddux, and Pedro Martinez. All Hall of Famers. Combined, they struck out over 12,000 hitters. They faced Tony Gwynn 330 times, struck him out 3 times. Anyway. All right, congratulations to Ben Vitch and Quinn Norman, who play for the Newfoundland Regiment. They're off to Truro, Nova Scotia between the 2nd and the 8th of November to play for Team Canada Red at the World Under-17 Challenge. Only 8 players from the queue made it to that particular World Challenge. 2 of them from the regiment are boys, Ben Vitch and Quinn Norman. And Ryan Green, Paradise native, scored his very first NHL goal last night for the Chicago Blackhawks in an 8-3 victory. Congratulations to Ryan. Okay, let's move on. So while doom scrolling social media last evening, I saw a dashcam video of someone passing a school bus. Stopped, lights on, stop sign deployed. My question would be, is now with the school bus camera pilot project, which I think there's only 6 or 10, whatever school buses that are equipped with this camera, have we actually picked anybody up on that camera and issued a ticket? If so, I think it'd be probably pretty helpful if when that happens, why don't we hear a release from whether it be the Department of Education or whatever the case may be, because people have to feel a little bit of financial fear on top of the fear of striking, hurting or killing a school-aged child getting on or off the school bus. But those videos just don't stop. And you have to wonder what it's going to take. Are we going to need to see a headline of a terrible injury or a death before people just realize when the bus stops and the lights are flashing and the stop sign is deployed, traffic in both directions must stop? Can't believe we're still seeing those videos. But anyway, you want to talk about it. Let's go. All right, sticking with education for a bit. So we had Dale Lamb, who's the new president at the NLTA, on the program during the campaign trail, let's say a couple of weeks ago. They've talked about some pretty significant things, hopefully will change for the better, for not only teachers, but obviously for students and academic outcomes. So working directly with the government, things like the obvious, class composition, class size, and yes, violence in schools. I wonder where we are on that pathway to hiring 400 more professionals to work in the education system. Haven't heard much of an update. Now here we are in the transition between the Liberals and the PCs, who have the right to form a majority government. So where are we on that front? Then they talk about teaching units. It's always been bizarre to me that you'll hear someone who's a teacher and they've got 0.25 here, 0.25 there. So they're floating amongst 4 schools with a quarter worth of a salary and more than that in responsibility. But that can't work for anybody. It certainly can't work for the students with any kind of continuity. It certainly can't work for the teachers necessarily. So then it's, of course, a careful review of the Education Accord. It's a crying shame that important document got knocked off the rails somewhat when there was the revelation that there were 15 fictitious sources cited in the Education Accord, which is a real problem. There's lots of important things discussed over the course of 18 months between the chairs Burke and Goodnow and everyone else who contributed. But let's talk education here this morning because, again, getting it right there is probably a pretty big deal. All right, sticking with school somewhat. Skilled trades. We also heard from Premier-designate Tony Wakeham over the course of the campaign talk about the skilled trades, whether it be putting the current skilled trades people to work on any of the mega projects, whether it be Baden Road or otherwise. But he also talked about putting skilled trades courses into the high school curriculum. It was an elective, or it is an elective, over about 75% of the high schools in the province. So Mr. Wakeham saying it should be part of the core subject offerings. Not a bad idea. I mean, actual hands-on exposure may indeed be that eye-opener to a high school student who says, well, you know what? Maybe that is for me. Because then you juxtapose it with some of the other issues we're talking about in the K-12 system. And this is part of the Education Accord as well. Financial literacy. Pretty important. The value of a dollar, how to manage your money into the future, is a bit of a lost art insofar as critical thinking goes about the value of money. Then it's digital literacy, which of course is starting to become more and more difficult, even for the most savvy people out there to discern about what you're seeing, whether it has any veracity, it's fake, it's real, it's accurate, it's bull, I almost cursed, it's BS. So add to it, entrepreneurship. Not everyone is built to be an entrepreneur. But some people who may indeed have the gumption and the wherewithal and the ideas maybe don't get exposed to the concept until they've already plotted their course to be a nurse or to be an engineer or to be what have you. But entrepreneurs are a big driver of the economy in this country. So maybe we just plant that seed as junior high students are going through and high school students are making their way through. You never know. We do a pretty good job here. Lots of real successful entrepreneurs, but adding more to the fold because they've had their eyes open in their formative years may be a pretty good idea. But let's talk education here today, if you're so inclined. All right, speaking of the skilled trades, people will still wonder about possibilities for skilled trades workers and others to be employed on the Churchill River. Okay. This is not new, but it's maybe a little bit of a different angle that Tony Wakeham has now taken on the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding. For starters, and I don't think he's wrong here, but let's talk about whether or not this is actual reality. Quote from Mr. Wakeham: "I want to take this out of the political arena and put it back into the hands of experts to take a look at what I know they will know." I mean, take it out of the political arena? Maybe heavily influenced because of the fact that we were going to the polls, that horse is out of the barn. That ship has sailed. It is very much a political conversation at this moment in time. Just look no further than if you, once again on social media, which is a bit of an echo chamber and maybe not a fair look at the reality of what people think in the real world, but it is very highly politicized and unavoidably so. It's just the nature of the beast. Which brings me on to the binding referendum that Mr. Wakeham's talking about. And I think we should be talking about that here. I'm not so sure if he's going to follow through on it or backpedal on it and give it second thought. I don't know what's going to happen. None of us do necessarily. But he seems to be fully committed to it. Considering the fact that it has been so wildly politicized, is there an argument to be made for a referendum? It's becoming less and less a good idea as time goes on. I mean, just look at some of the social media threads. And again, I acknowledge it's not necessarily the real world or reflective of it. But most people who are completely opposed, it's for two reasons. It's the Liberals and it's Quebec. These are emotional things. Now, there's a good reason why there's a widespread distrust of Quebec. in this province, and fair enough if there's widespread distrust in the Liberals in this province. But is that really enough to form an opinion that would look at a contract that extends into 5-6 decades down the road and what it might mean? I'm not suggesting it's perfect. It's probably the furthest thing from. So the independent review is an excellent idea. What we nudge up against now is timing. Look, I'm with you. I think the independent review, as set forward by Justice LeBlanc at the Muskrat Falls inquiry, and it was clear, any capital expenditure on any type of project in excess of $50 million requires additional scrutiny, independently so. It is really a bit of a cell phone when the Liberal Party made it one of the linchpins, if not the linchpin, of their campaign, and it didn't work out for them, knowing all the while that people remember that. People remember Muskrat Falls. People remember the LeBlanc inquiry, and people remember that recommendation. So the fact that they didn't proceed with that independent review has made it a bigger problem from them than it maybe could have been had they changed their tactics or their course on that. And then when it is part of the campaign, how can we walk it out of the political arena? I mean, how can that even be done? To me, it feels and sounds impossible, as much as it's an excellent idea, because we're talking about contractual negotiations. Whether it be you like Legault, you hate Legault, you like Hogan, Fury, or you dislike them, whatever the case may be, I think we've got to have a bit more of a well-rounded chat on that front. But if you want to take it on, we can do exactly that. All right, and we can, of course, we're only a day removed from the election night results show. And yes, the PCs were 21 seats, a majority government for the Tories. I'm still finding it a little bit odd how shocked some people are that this happened. 10 years of Liberals, it's kind of what we do. You have a party in, they arrived somewhere near or past the rest before date, and people vote for change. It's pretty natural occurrence here. So what the future holds, look, regardless of who you voted for, if you're happy or sad about the results, we need effective governance and we need some positive change to happen. Will the Tories bring it? Remains to be seen. They're inheriting a pretty complicated world here, so off with the majority fashion. To that end, it really is something when you look at the map and the Reds and the Blues. The Tories carried rural for the most part, which brings forward some interesting juxtaposition for some organizations and industries who are looking for whether it be additional layer of consultation and arbitration and a positive pathway forward, like the FFAW. Jamie Baker, the Secretary-Treasurer, was on the program yesterday with a laundry list of what I'll just call requests or demands, or to follow up on campaign pledges made by Mr. Wakeham. So again, it really does describe, we know the issues that are facing the people in rural parts of the province. At least I think we do. The best way for me to fully understand it is when we hear from people who actually live and work in rural Newfoundland. But given how the Tories can thank the voting districts in more rural parts of the province, they absolutely, what's the word? I was going to say beholden. But given the fact that rural voters are largely responsible for the majority that the PCs now enjoy, strict attention to what happens in rural Newfoundland now is paramount, given the fact that the people that voted them in, they've got a list of problems, which I think many of us share. Sometimes we exaggerate for the sake of the whole rural-urban divide, but life is different. The issues are different in rural versus urban, even though many of the things, cost of living and healthcare, all those things we all share. Public safety, very similar vein, even though public safety issues might be heightened in more densely populated parts of the province. But how will the PCs approach the rural issues specifically? The trickiest one is going to be healthcare. Lots of promises and pledges about incentives to be brought forward, and good. People need access to primary care where they live as best possible. So that pathway forward is going to be tricky, because just think about it. There is an actual national meeting or congregation of the provinces and territorials' health ministers. So my initial question would be, is who's actually representing this province? Is Crystalline Howell there as the most recent Minister of Health Community Services? Because we do not currently have one in place, and who that might be into the future representing the PCs, I don't know. But you can only hope we have somebody there, whether it be Dr. Parfrey or a deputy minister or somebody, because they're talking about some of the big issues facing the entire country. primarily, is trying to come up with a national license for healthcare professionals. It's so long overdue. I mean, just think about doctors and nurse practitioners and LPNs and go right down through the entire gamut. They live and work in the same country. There's no need for all the territorial issues and territorial protective issues. How many border towns who would be classified as rural, if a doctor in Saskatchewan can help out in Alberta or in Manitoba without having to jump through hoops, the paperwork and the frustration, that could really change the water on the proverbial beans here. So a national license. They're also talking about actual rural healthcare, which is going to be an extraordinary challenge in the future. Also, they're asking the questions out loud about why everybody hasn't hopped onto the National Pharmacare Program. These are pretty excellent questions. So I would wonder out loud who's representing this province at that critically important meeting up along. But again, when you read or listen to commentary come from coast to coast to coast, the healthcare concerns are largely the same. They really, truly are. But I would like, so if someone at the government, especially in the Department of Health Community Services or at NL Health Services, just for my curiosity, I'd like to know who's actually there representing the province while they entertain those conversations. Your thoughts. How are we doing on the phone, Dave? So whether it be election related or some of the big topics, you know me, happy and willing and wanting to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Plenty of reaction floating in regarding comments made yesterday, an email I referred to, about insurance, home insurance in particular, in areas that are facing rebuild. The post-Fiona stories are coming in fast and furious. People are sharing the exact same concerns or questions regarding their insurance companies. The inability to get home insurance because there was a gap insurance after your home was destroyed in a post-tropical storm, and in this case Fiona, I wonder how many of those conversations would be similar for folks rebuilding, who those some 203 structures that were lost in CBN as a result of the Kingston fire. So the Tories also have their hands full there, trying to see what the future holds for all these people who are still living in lives of concern and anguish and anxiety and financial uncertainty. Is anyone in the Kingston, or pardon me, the CBN area on the North Shore that wants to bring it forward? Your specifics are more important than mine. All right, last one. So enrollment numbers at MUN, not good. Let's dig into them a little bit. Just over 17,000 students enrolled at MUN this fall. But enrollment overall at the institution has declined by 4.6% when compared to the fall of 2024. Okay, undergraduate students dropped by 3.2%. Graduate student enrollment dropped by 9.7%. The university is pointing at the decrease in the number of international students, declined by 23.5% year over year. A lot of that to do with the cap on international students and student visas at the federal government level, even though I thought we had remained pretty much unscathed with any reduction on that front. Domestic enrollment is up. That's a good thing. So it's up about 2%. A couple of questions would be, look, the role of Memorial University and all post-secondary into the future, economically, societally, is obviously important. But think about it on the revenue side. MUN has already tried to find pretty significant savings. And one of the streams of revenue, of course, is tuition and fees, especially international students, which pay a pretty hefty tuition to enroll and to study at Memorial University. I wonder what that means for their revenue shortcomings and operating expenditures, which continue to increase year over year, whether you include maintenance or preventative maintenance or the infrastructure deficit that they're already dealing with, into the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. So MUN enrollment down, but maybe some encouragement on the domestic enrollment, up slightly, 2% year over year. Last one. Condolences to the friends and family of Tom O'Brien. Tom O'Brien served 3 terms on council in Stephenville, 3 terms as mayor, and my condolences to all involved. What's interesting when I think about conversations we've had with then Mayor O'Brien is he was way out in front of sounding the alarms about the future of the Stephenville Airport. And lo and behold, obviously, he was 100% right in the concerns that he shared about the future of that airport. And now we all know the saga that's unfolded since, with the Diamond Group stuff and all the lofty promises and, of course, zero delivery on said promises. But condolences to the friends, family, and Business relations of Tom O'Brien. I think he passed away on his birthday. Terrible story. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That only works one way. If you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind, don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1. Darren, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Patty. I'm calling back again. I called a few weeks ago, actually back in the summer, about the heat pump program. I switched over to the heat pump from the oil furnace that I used to have, and I was saying that my heat pump was installed incorrectly. Since then, I've had an inspector come out, the electrical inspector come out to my house and found out that there was a bunch of electrical issues. The wrong size breaker was used, wrong size wiring was used, no disconnect in my basement, and then a couple smaller issues as well, like a label not labeled properly, and another small issue. But the electrician that was used by this company has now been suspended because he had been operating under with a fraudulent license in our area. And this company has installed a whole bunch of heat pumps in this area, in the Green Bay area. And now I'm concerned that people are using these heat pumps with, like I said, undersized wiring and undersized breakers. There's a fire concern on, people, could be using these heat pumps and causing fire issues or hazards. And so I've spoken to quite a few people. I even had the opportunity to speak to Premier Hogan, mentioning that the government program has no checks and balances in place to make sure that these companies had installed heat pumps properly. They go ahead and take the word of the contractor saying that they were installed correctly when a lot of heat pumps were not installed properly. Other issues that I have with my heat pump install was they didn't put it on a ducted box and didn't tie it back into my air returns for the upstairs of my house. My heat pump is a disaster, and there are numerous people in this area with the same issues. My concern now is that, and I've been told by the Take Charge NL program and by Newfoundland Hydro, that neither want to take any responsibility in my problems or anybody else's problems. The thing is the Take Charge program has a list of contractors on their website, which gives you a false sense of security in hiring the company, because they tell you have to use their list of contractors to go ahead with the install, because they've been certified or verified by the companies to have the proper credentials. And now they say they don't want to hold any responsibility, and they just completely pay out. If I have a contractor that works in my house and I'm not happy with the work, I would withhold some payments until the dispute can be resolved. But when they completely pay out, it gives me, the customer, absolutely no leverage against the contractor. So, and there's numerous people in this area that have these problems going on, and there needs to be something done to help people, because some people have no other heat source now other than their heat pump. What's going to happen if somebody's house does catch on fire or there is electrical issues? There could be some serious problems here.
Yeah. The process obviously doesn't work as intended. So are you suggesting that if it's a government-related program, that the government play a role in things like inspection during rough-in, inspection upon completion? Because for me, if I'm going to buy a heat pump or whatever from a company directly, I want them to take some responsibility here. I want them to understand who I'm dealing with as an electrician or someone who's going to install the unit. And then I want them to come by to ensure, because they've already walked me through the process. They've sold me a piece of equipment. They've helped me identify all the rebates and subsidy pots of money. But I want them to come over and do the final inspection to make sure that everything is done the way they need needed to be done, because their reputation eventually will be on the line. So for me, it's a company thing. You think it's a government thing, or what are your thoughts there?
Well, the problem with saying that it's a company thing, which I agree, it is a company thing, but you have no leverage, like I said, once the government pays out the entire program. So the government forces you to tell you that you can only use a list of installers off of their list.
I understand.
You can't use your own company. So a lot of people don't realize also that there are these issues with their heat pumps. Like, not everybody's trained to know that they actually have a problem in their house. They're just assuming that once these guys have installed the heat pump, and it will turn on and off and run, but they don't know that there's undersized wiring or undersized breakers in their house unless they call the inspector and have an electrical inspector come to their house. But a Code 1 certified electrician can sign off on their own work and don't have to have any other inspectors come out. So yes, if you're getting a kitchen renovation and you're not happy with the way the cupboards are installed or the tiles on your floor already start moving, yes, you can see that and you understand it and know it. But mechanical issues like this, most people don't or wouldn't recognize that there is a problem because you're using a contractor that's signed off on a government list. So the responsibility should be there at their end as well, because they're the ones also paying out the money to people that qualified for the whole rebate in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So
I'm just trying to think while we speak here this morning. Again, like if I was going to, and I'm not going to name any particular company that sells heat pumps or mini splits or electric furnaces or what have you, but I'll go buy one. Like I've advised people over the course of the last number of years, is get the company to do the work for you. Identifying pots for rebates or what have you, sell you the unit, make sure you call your insurance company to tell them what you're doing to make sure you don't compromise your insurance period. But then I'm going to really want them, upon signing on the dotted line and taking the unit upon delivery, I want them to tell me, not only am I going to use a list of approved contractors, electricians or otherwise, but if they understand all the working features of getting that heat pump installed properly, I want them to come back at the end and sign off. Not the electrician to sign off on his or her own work. I want the company to understand the process and come back and tell me, oh, no, you got to get him back in to do this, or you got to get her back in to do that. I need them to play that role, because if we leave it to government, we'll be waiting a month of Sundays for the final sign off before you can flip the switch to turn on your heat pump. So that's why I would ask for the company that I deal with directly.
And I've done that, and the company's just abandoned me. They've cut my phone number off because they know they're actually doing terrible work. So they're just trying to scam the government by taking as much money as they can with doing as little work as possible and not doing the job properly. They know what they're doing. This company knows what they're doing wrong. Like I said, it's not just the electrical side of it. They didn't do any of the ductwork that was involved in finishing the job. So it's not just an electrician; it's the entire job. So this contractor has actually abandoned me in the fact that I can't get them to even return calls anymore when I ask them to come back and do the work that was supposed to be done. So it's not just a contractor issue.
Yeah, no, fair enough. You're the one living it, and I understand where you're coming from. On top of that, when all of these rebates came to pass, provincial programs, federal programs, all of a sudden, I'll just pick round numbers, all of a sudden a unit that cost you $2,000 was all of a sudden $3,750. So, yes, the companies maybe played footloose and fancy-free with profit margins and maybe didn't stick to their guns enough to have quality work done representing the units that they sold you. This is obviously a terrible situation.
Yes, and like I said, I'm fortunate that I do have a little bit of other heat in my house, but there's going to be people that are in the same situation, because I've already heard of lots of people in our area that this is their only heat source now, and will be using it all winter, and there's no money left for them. They've been left without a proper working heating unit. They had a perfectly working good oil furnace before, but now they may not even know that they're at risk of burning their house down. So that's why I said the government does have to help these people out, because people switched over because they didn't have the funds to change to a heat pump. They decided to change over because of the rebate program.
I get it. So because the government does play some sort of role here, maybe a good place to lodge a formal complaint and maybe get some positive resolution here is Service NL is consumer affairs here in this province. And you can probably make a pretty good argument about how you were encouraged based on government incentive and government's own comments about making that shift, that to ensure it gets done right, what role they might play. I'd even phrase it like that is, are you telling me that you bear no responsibility here? And see what they come back with, as opposed to, I want your money. Just get them to put it in writing, email, response or otherwise, exactly about what role do you think you play here? And I think that'd be a curious way to start the conversation.
Well, everybody that I have talked to says they take no responsibility in it. I've talked to the government. I've talked to Newfoundland Hydro. I've talked to the premier. Now, the premier didn't say that he holds any responsibility. He says that he doesn't or didn't know that there was no checks and balances in place on the customer side. So, but I have talked to almost everybody that I can.
Well, if I come up with any further ideas, Darren, I have your number and I'll be happy to get back to you. I know someone who works in that industry, and I'll put it to them and see if there's some sort of suggestion or some sort of advice that maybe will be helpful in rectifying this. And if I get you something positive, I'll be sure to get back to you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time. Stay in touch, Darren. Let me know if you come up with anything.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty predictable, is that when there's government incentive for one thing or another, all of a sudden the value of that, or the price of that product, I should say, not value, the price of that product is all of a sudden, out of nowhere, more expensive. What do you know? Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Rob Strong. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. How about you?
Oh, good, yeah. Surviving.
Good man, me too.
Trying to interpret the recent election and the results of the change of government and its potential impact upon offshore oil, and more specifically on Bay du Nord. I think everybody knows there seems to be a disagreement, a rift, a something between, of course, what Trades NL we're expecting in the way of topside fabrication and what Equinor are talking about. So my message to all parties, not that anybody's going to listen to me, but my message to all parties is we've got to find a way to make this happen. We've got to find a way to bridge the gap. If Equinor is saying that we're not doing any topsides, and yet the Trades NL, who I have a lot of respect for, are saying we want 75% of the topsides, there's got to be a happy medium somewhere in between. And I think there's probably a role for government. I know the incoming premier has said that they want to maximize the content, the local content for Newfoundland on topsides fabrication. So it's a bit frightening that because we desperately need that project. I mean, people don't realize that Bay du Nord really is besides being one part of an overall field called Bay du Nord, but there are 5 separate fields in the Bay du Nord development: Cappahayden and Misan and Bacalou and Harpoon, and collectively they probably contain over 1 billion barrels of oil. Now, we know Equinor is planning, if the project gets fitted, if there's such a word as fitted, financial investment decision, they want to start off with two of the fields and then gradually move and develop the rest of it. So that would involve, my guess is, you're talking, it's probably 60, 70 wells. And, 70 wells is a lot of drilling activity when you consider we've probably only drilled a couple hundred wells all offshore Newfoundland. So that's how important it is. I can understand Trade's NL position. They certainly don't want to see all offshore fabrication go internationally. They've got a great pool of skilled workers, and there's not a great employment situation right now. So you can understand how Trade's NL feel, but you can also understand how Equinor feel. Equinor has operations going on all over the world. Just today, for instance, an offshore field called Bacalhau in Brazil just came on stream, and they're working in West Africa. I think they're now working in Suriname, and obviously they're working in the North Sea. So they have to balance this project, i.e. Bay du Nord, against other projects and have to make it work. So how do they accomplish that? Well, I think they got to sit down at the table, and certainly there's a role for government here, be it the provincial government or the government of Canada. Some people have suggested that government of Canada might introduce some sort of a petroleum incentive program or accelerated taxation write-offs or a reduction of the emissions cap. But I can't stress how important it is for the oil and gas industry to make this project happen, and I certainly hope that this new government is going to sit down with Trades and others, by the way, because not everybody. There are other companies that are not member or whose workers are not part of Trades NL, just as important. I'm thinking of, in this case, not the welders and the pipe fitters and the trades, but I'm also thinking about the guys that fly the helicopters, the guys that run the supply boats back and forth, the caterers, the full range of crew on these rigs. So my message to the new premier and his government is call up Trades NL and call up Equinor and sit at the table and let's see if we can't resolve the differences. To maybe have some give and take from both sides, but it's important for Newfoundland to see that happen. So,
a couple of things. So, federal government involvement, I would be wholly surprised if there's anything beyond some attention to things like the emissions cap that is in place. Financial incentives from the federal government seems highly unlikely to me, given even, unless there's some sort of capitulation to the province of Alberta. I mean, even though they're talking about this mythical pipeline with no company that wants to build it, between regulatory certainty and the emissions cap, that might be the only thing that the feds get involved with, necessarily speaking. And on jobs, look, I understand entirely where Bob Fiander or Trades NL is coming from. I also understand where Tony Wakeham's coming from, but Equinor's listening. They're following along. It's not like they're immune to this provincial election. Why? Because their big significant find is off our shores. So if Trades NL say they want 75% of the topsides work to be done here, they give an endorsement of Tony Wakeham. He talks about maximizing value on shore. We're also thinking about a company called Equinor that made a financial decision to pause it. So these types of comments, they do matter, and they will influence any sit down to negotiate a benefits agreement. So I'm not saying Fiander or Wakeham are wrong, because that's what they believe. But we also have to consider how you message this stuff. If you say something along the lines of, we will try to get every single job possible here, versus put a number like 75% on it, I mean, how receptive is Equinor to that? I can tell you, they're not. Because they've already said as much. So,
but in negotiations, you always start off with your highest price. And again, you got to look at capacity. If you look at the configuration for the FPSO topsides, from what I've seen, and I sent you a copy of it, from what I've seen from the schematic or the drawing that BW, who's the contractor, has produced, they're talking about 5 or 6 big modules. Well, Bull Arms Fabrication Hall can probably do 2 modules. Maybe Marystown can do 1. So what other capacity is there in Newfoundland? I mean, people say, why can't we build it in Argentia? Well, Argentia is not a steel fabrication site. It was a site to build a concrete structure. So we probably don't have the capacity to do 75% here. As far as we certainly have the manpower capacity. There's no problems finding qualified workers. But do we have the physical capacity to build 75% of the topsides? I don't know. But as I say, this is important, and it's so important in Newfoundland and Labrador that well, of course you mentioned the emissions cap, which is critical to not only Bay du Nord, but critical to any future development. But if we don't have the capacity, and we have to try to meet a schedule, because operators want to get the oil out of the ground as quickly as possible. So where are we? I mean, if we're not talking to each other, we're not getting anywhere. So there's got to be a way. They got to find a way to make it happen, Patty. It's too important to Newfoundland.
Yeah. Last one for me is, look, putting your most demanding foot forward in negotiation, pretty standard fare, and having something in the back of your mind about where you're willing to settle, those things are done quietly, though. There's a difference in putting it out in an election campaign versus taking an approach when you close the doors on the 8th floor of the Confederation building. So that's where I think maybe, thinking through the message, it may indeed encourage people to vote for you, but it might weaken your hand to go sit down with the actual person or company you need to negotiate with. So that's my only point there is, you keep your cards close to the chest or the vest.
It's a poker game. You don't expose your hand right up front. You save it for the end, sort of thing. So let's hope we're going to reach that end. That's my message.
I appreciate your time this morning, Rob. Thanks for doing it.
Okay, Patty. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's see here. Let's take a break. There's a caller in the queue named Paul. He wants to respond to Darren, who had the issue with the heat pump. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line 5. Paul, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about those heat pumps, where people put the heat pump in and get rid of their oil tanks in there.
Yep.
And when I was living in Toronto, there was consumers gas. If you change the gas, and to give it a good price on the oil furnace, right? So they had a lot of fly-by-nights there, and they were taking the furnace out, giving the guy natural gas for heat, and you take the tank out, and you saw the pipes off in the basement, and forget to tell the oil company that they got into a heat pump. And what happened then? You got automatic deliveries. Well, guess what happens? Oil company goes there, put some oil in your basement for you.
No, I shouldn't be laughing at that, because that's devastating and expensive to clean up.
Well, yeah, and it happened a lot of times in Toronto where I lived at, and you wouldn't believe the mess. And there was one guy, he was sleeping in the basement, and he came out, and he was soaked in oil, because the oil company went there and he didn't know that he changed over, and he got soaked, and there was a lot of lawsuits for it.
I've never heard a story like that. I suppose it certainly can happen. So if you ever do get your oil tank removed, probably a good idea is to have the oil company remove it. And if they don't, make sure that they know that you're no longer needing delivery of oil before it ends up flooding your basement. Just imagine that mess. And the cleanup. I mean, if you spill a spoonful of home heating oil in the backyard or a spoonful of gasoline, if you're forced to clean it up, it can be extraordinarily expensive. So that's a really strange tale, and a cautionary one at that, I suppose.
Yeah, because the oil companies wouldn't have nothing to do with it. If you got a contractor in there doing all the work, and you got a fly-by-night coming in there and not doing a proper job, then the vent pipe is outside and the fill pipe is outside, and then the oil truck comes along and bango, you got oil in your basement.
Yeah, but you put a permanent cap on the outside, and inside they handle it differently. I've seen it in action in the past, but it's a good story to tell, so that if anybody listening is moving away from oil and the tank has to come out of the house, make sure that everybody who needs to know the tank is not in the home anymore does exactly what needs to be done. That's a strange story, but I'm glad you told it.
Yeah, but it doesn't take much to move the vent pipe and the fill pipe. But,
doesn't.
Being on the lazy side, you just saw it off inside and leave the pipe and the pipe, fill pipe and the vent pipe outside. So it looks like you're on oil.
Yeah, there are some decent reasons why you needn't do the outside, and we don't need to get into it right now. But, Paul, it's a story that I'm sure some people will listen to and say, uh-oh, I don't know if I can expect an oil delivery to my basement floor this afternoon. So thanks for doing it this morning. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Imagine that happening. Oh, my God. Anyway, before we get to the news, let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to Pam Parsons, re-elected as the member of the House of Assembly for Harbour Grace, Port de Grave. Good morning, Pam. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty, and good morning to all your listeners. It's a beautiful fall morning out here, but I just wanted to call in and say thank you again to my constituents for re-electing me. This is my fourth general election now. It feels like quite a long time. It's 2015 is when I was first elected. But I just wanted to say thank you to all the support. And it's been a long month, as you can appreciate, on the campaign trail, knocking on as many doors as we possibly can, but and hearing a lot of good feedback from people and the concerns people have. And just, ready to get back at it, obviously in a different role, because I've been in government ever since I've been elected. But as we know, we are now in the official opposition. And so I'll be going in there with a different role, and I look forward to embracing that new challenge.
I know the party has to, take a breath, regroup, rebuild, post-mortem and what have you. But I don't think it's unfair to ask a re-elected Liberal member of the House of Assembly as to what they think went wrong here, because something did go wrong. I have my ideas. How about you?
Yeah, I think from the feedback I've heard is people wanted more information, were concerned about the MOU process. That's what I heard here in Harbour Grace, Portagrave. I mean, yes, healthcare is huge. That was a big concern from many people, and rightfully so. As we know, healthcare is at a pivoting point. It needs to change. We're operating from a model from decades ago. But that said, the Health Accord. We have undergone the Health Accord, as we know. Recommendations have started to be implemented. Pat Parfrey, of course, leading that. But it's going to take some time. But that said, we know change is definitely needed. And it's not unique to Newfoundland and Labrador. We know this is happening across the entire country. So healthcare, cost of living, we're seeing a global cost of living crisis. A lot of people are hurting. A lot of people are struggling. And I mean, even people who are making good wages, good livings, are also finding it difficult. So it was a number of these things. But as we know, we do have a historic deal before us. We do know Quebec is in a position where they're in a great need for power. They need it now. We know multiple premiers of the past have tried to crack open that deal. The door was shut in their face by Quebec. But now Quebec is coming to the table where, they need the power, and they're anxious to develop Gull Island. We have the assets, as we know, but we're not just going to let that happen. Obviously, we want to rectify the wrongs of 1969, and people of the province want to make sure that they're getting the absolute best deal for that. And I guess we're all on that same page. We want to extract the best and protect our province with regard to escalating clauses that should be in this. The 60-40 buy, with Quebec taking on all the risks of the mega projects. People want to work home here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and those jobs need to go to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first and foremost. So there's lots of great concerns, but what I'm looking forward to? Mr. Wakeham made a lot of promises, and I'm going into the role as a critic as opposed to defending government or a minister for government, and I look forward to that great dialogue, because there was a lot of promises made out to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and so I look forward to those debates and to see how they're going to deliver on that. I mean, he actually went as far as to say he'll have a referendum on this, and so we'll see what happens going forward about this discussion, because it's certainly not over.
Absolutely, I don't know what the future holds, but if you say people wanted more information and to guarantee the very best deal is in hand, would you characterise it a mistake not to immediately abide by the LeBlanc inquiry recommendation to send this for an independent oversight review, someone that's independent from a political appointees?
Yeah, and I will take you back, and I'm sure you tuned in to that special debate that Premier Fury, had occur on the House of the floor of the House of Assembly in January, with the experts in from J.P. Morgan, who were the expert negotiators on that deal. But that said, people want to hear more from Hydro. I mean, I applaud Jennifer Williams. She took the time a couple of times to have a good conversation with you on open line. But again, and I encourage the public, get involved in the conversation. The MOU is out there. It's available for people to read. It's a long read, as you would know, Patty, but become engaged. Learn the facts, get out there, ask the questions, and be involved where forums are available, town halls even. And again, given the stance, I will remind people, when we had this debate, it's a non-binding MOU process that's happening. There is no deal. These talks will continue until April of 2026. And that when that debate happened in the House of Assembly, that was simply a debate to go forward to continue these talks. But what I will say, and what was disappointing, as an MHA to see that Tony Wakeham got up and walked through the House of Assembly when it was time to take a stand to vote. Him and his caucus, they left the building. Literally, they did not take a stand, whether they agreed with it, whether they didn't agree with it, or what. They got up, they left. They did not exercise their democratic right. So every constituent represented by MHAs who walked out of the House that day did not have a voice. I applaud the NDP. I applaud the independents. They took a stand. They took a vote. And that's what it's about. It's not about walking out. You're elected here to do a job in the House of Assembly, and everybody should exercise that right on behalf of their constituents. I always say, when I stand to talk in the House of Assembly, it's not about my opinion only. I represent thousands of people. I'm representing them. I'm representing their concerns. And I expect nothing less from every member who takes that oath. And we're all going to be sworn in to take our oath. So again, I look forward to this. I'm a journalist prior to this life in politics, as you know. My job was to ask questions and to get the facts out there. And believe you me, as an opposition member, I have full intent on doing that for the people of the province, not just in my district, but the entire Newfoundland and Labrador.
I appreciate your time. Congratulations on your re-elections. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Let's get a break in for the news. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go. Line number 1. Kevin, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
Yes, first off, I want to say that I'm definitely not a partisan person. I ran in my lifetime. I ran for the Liberals. I campaign manager for the NDP, and in this election, being a trade NL member, I supported Tony Wakeham, and what he offered us. Well, as a matter of fact, our Liberal leader didn't even have the common decency to come to our annual meeting. I mean, there's 14,000 plus members, and their families and everything else. So I guess probably that possible 60,000 votes didn't really mean a big lot to him, And on reflection, he's probably a little bit behind the 8 ball right now. But anyway, that's for another thing. But yesterday morning, your first caller yesterday morning, he was praising up this deal and stuff like that. And I've been to, I think, at least three of these sessions with Nalcor and stuff like that. And, there's too much not in this MOU for us just, rubber stamp it and let it go. It's unbelievable that any person in Newfoundland could actually even think about this without a review. I mean, I've listened to Tony Wakeham the same way probably 5 or 6 different times, and it's in on different press releases and everything else. And his view on it right now is that we need an independent study, and that's why he walked out of the House of Assembly, because he did not have the information he needed to make a decision. And the logic in that is to walk away from it.
But that's not what that vote was about. That vote was simply about whether or not to have one additional layer of review. It wasn't about whether or not to rubber stamp it and just move on.
No, I never said that at that time. But that vote had absolutely nothing to do with that, as I say. The vote was for an independent review. That was 10 months ago. That independent review could be done now. It could be, it could be filed. It could be in the media, and we should be talking about the results of that. And maybe that deal is probably the best deal that we'll ever see in this province. But like I said, your first caller the other day, and another caller down the line, I mean, shows exactly what's wrong with that Newfoundland politics and the partisanship that is going on in this province. That gentleman, he was only wanting to stay in Newfoundland and all this stuff, and this is the best deal. But is he putting his zeal to stay in Newfoundland at the head of the people of Newfoundland? Are we just accepting this deal again for no real reason other than a few jobs and stuff like that? There have to be better ways to look at this deal. The numbers don't really pan out if you look at them. And, there had to be something better. There got to be something better than that. And in 50 years, can anybody in their right mind most people only sign 30 years on a mortgage. Never mind 50 years on a project that, worth billions and billions of dollars. Now they're talking $400 billion. And we're not going to have an independent review. I don't think that could happen anywhere else in the world but here, and it's fantastic that it would even be put on the table, and certainly glad, that the election did come out the way that it did, because if nothing else other than the fact that we do need that independent review, and we do need to put Newfoundlanders first. We got to get away from this partisan politics. Like I said, but yesterday, it was all about liberals. It wasn't about the people, the actual people of this province, and that's what's wrong with this province. That we don't think of the people first. It's my party, and that's it. My God, it's time to grow up in this province. To be completely honest with you. Then a little while down the road there, after that, a few callers after that, you got Tony Glory on. Another one that actually, helping to destroy Newfoundland. Because, you take that same situation, Paddy, and it was the PCs on the other side instead of the Liberals this time, and they were coming in with this MOU. What would Tony have to say about that then? It would have been the best thing since sliced bread. My God, there's something seriously wrong with this attitude in our province, and the people need to wake up and get on board and start looking after people in this province. And then this morning you had another gentleman on there that figures we should sell off the Bay of the North project for a few helicopter drops in a couple of wells. The defeatist attitude in Newfoundland is unbelievable. We always seems to be just settling, and that's it. We can't push ourselves forward. Because, I don't know if we're not worldly. I was here in '69 when they did the first deal in Turtle Falls, and I would safely say then, we weren't worldly enough to even be involved in that deal because we didn't have any expertise whatsoever. But that's not the case today. The case today that there's all kinds of people there, and we can find the experts that can do this stuff right. I mean, the fellow yesterday talked about Musselwhite Falls. The biggest problem with Musselwhite Falls, and I never agree with it. You can go back to the transcripts to 2011 and say that I didn't think it was the best cost option. But this fellow blamed all the overrun to Danny Williams. Once that was signed and everything else, it was the Nalcor engineers, superintendents, and managers that screwed up that project. It wasn't no more than that. Every task I worked on, every task there had to be done 3 times. There was no such thing. You do it right the first time, they tell you it's wrong, then you do it the way they want it, then they tell you that's wrong, then you go back to the first time. That's the way that project went, straight through,
Well, some of that happened when we hired a company with no experience in those conditions, the harsh conditions that present themselves in Labrador. So Astaldi, that was just one of the steps that we can call or characterize missteps now that led to obliteration of schedule, obliteration of budget. So you can add that to the pile. And one of the biggest problems with Muskrat is we were the customer. We were the only customer, which is a hard way to handcuff yourself.
Yes, it is, and I firmly believe in that. But the sad thing is, it wasn't just the conditions or anything like that. That project, there was never any delays for weather or anything like that. I was there the whole time, and there was no. Can you imagine when you build a building, to build a powerhouse in, that's too small. That's got nothing to do with the weather. That's an engineering issue.
Yeah, but I was more meaning experience in this arena, experience in these conditions, experience with that type of winter, experience with a hydro development. Yeah, and it is. Everything else is the same. And, our friend there a little while ago, we don't have the space to build all these modules for Maiden North. My God. Has he ever woke up as he drove out past overpass? We got land as far as the eye can see, and a shoreline second to none in the world. And we can build anything here that possibly could be built. The only thing is, we took that defeatist attitude way back when.
our Atlantic Accord. There's conditions in there that we should be following and stuff like that, but we're not. We always seem to settle for a few dollars here or stuff like that. Can you imagine that the coppers of Newfoundland had all the income tax for every module that was built for our offshore outside this province? The exact amount of money that would be into this province. It's sad when we settle for stuff like that. I find it hard to believe, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's a lot to what you're talking about here this morning, Kevin. Look, the MOU, I've got no problem with an independent review. From day one, there was references on this program from me and others about the LeBlanc inquiry. And I don't know why we wouldn't reference something that costs us tens of millions of dollars, about billions of dollars worth of boondoggle, and be very, very cautious with next steps. And for the Liberals, a bit of a self-inflicted wound here, I would suggest. But I think it would also be helpful. And look, we've heard analysis from a variety of people on this program and in the public sphere. But for Mr. Wakeham, I think it would probably be important if he could let us know exactly the concerns he has with the MOU, as opposed to this needs an independent review, which is a bit of a catch-all, and we really do need to know exactly what we're going to ask somebody. People keep telling me that there's an easy answer to that. No, there's not. I mean, we can't just ask someone, did we get the best deal? You might as well ask Dave Williams, as opposed to Goldman Sachs. So we need to know exactly what the problem is, insofar as the political parties, what they think the problem is, because we've heard from Michael Wilson and Dave Vardy and Des Sullivan and Bill Wells and Gabe Gregory and a ton of folks, Danny Williams, a bunch of people here with very specific concerns, but not so much in the political theatre, because it's been about that theatre as much as anything else.
Yeah. Yes, and I heard you reference the terms of reference for this study and stuff like that, and that's what we need is a good set of terms of reference just to even start this. To be completely honest with you, right? Because if you don't have a good references, everything gets shoved aside or mixed and saying, "Oh, that's not part of it" and stuff like that. But your terms of reference has to be extremely strong right here and now.
Or you're just asking for an opinion versus some factual reference to risk or borrowing and present-day value, like whatever people want to do inside these proposed terms of reference. But it's got to be something tight enough where we're going to actually get a report back that gives us some things to sink our teeth into, as opposed to good or bad. Thumbs up or thumbs down is not necessarily going to be good enough for independent review. Kevin, anything else quick before I got to get going?
Yeah, no, and well, just in that, and you keep saying that Quebec is your only customer and stuff like that. That's a load of crap. This day and age, when you're talking $400 billion and the fund project that could see you with a large share of that, even if a company could make $100 billion off, and not the $200 billion plus that Quebec is looking for. I'm sure if we put out proposals, there'll be no trouble to find. And thanks for your time, Paddy.
Appreciate yours, Kevin. All the best. All right, okay, bye-bye. I mean, I've been asked that question. Have we asked other potential partners, like any big energy company, the Fortises of the world, American partners? There's still, I think, big questions to be asked about how you get the power to where you want to sell it. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go. Line number 6. Charlie, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
Paddy, your Montreal Canadiens are looking pretty good.
I'm going to kind of just be cautiously optimistic, but that young group, they are thick. I mean, like every team that are young and talented, they're a player or two away from being a real problem. I think, like second-line center, even though I don't think they're really woefully short there, but they look good to me, and I'm just going to keep my mouth relatively quiet to see how the season unfolds.
Well, they've got a 10-year window there with those players, and my poor old Leafs are looking at going down as opposed to going up. But anyway, I guess that's all part of it.
That's how it goes.
Paddy, I was kind of disgusted with the election, as you know. Two of the main concerns, the addressing of our provincial debt, which is scandalous. And all summer we've been dealing with a lack of water and fires and so on, and hardly a word about climate change. In fact, the PC leader, can you tell me exactly what he said regarding offshore oil and climate? You did make some statement there.
I did. He said he doesn't see a direct link between one or the other, which, I guess sometimes what happens here is politicians are notorious for speaking to an audience in the words that they want to hear. And that really trips up a lot of big policy, a lot of big public discourse here, because to not be able to draw that link is just woefully absent or divorced from what we already know.
So he talks about ferries and lowering taxes and health care. He didn't once say we have some ways of dealing with this in terms of we can cut this or cut that, as the NDP leader said. That wasn't dealt with all. It's as if we can borrow interminably, and it's not affecting us. It's like it's not a concern at all. Wouldn't that bother a lot of people who know that we spend $1 billion a year servicing this debt? And you have an attitude like that from he's our premier now.
Yeah, look, I mean, just from a personal perspective, I'm more now talking about it. I mean, every time I see a budget or a fiscal update, before we dig into very specific stuff down the line, I start with debt and deficit all the time. I mean, even during this campaign, I don't know how many times I said the deficit is $626 million with all the big tobacco settlement money included. It would have been over $1 billion. We're borrowing $4.1 billion. There's $1 billion to start. I mean, I got worn out talking about it. But seemingly, I'm in the minority because people want what they want when they want it. Well, you talk about onshore wind and fossil fuels and everything else, and what kind of world we're leaving to our grandkids. Well, we're going to leave them a pretty debt-laden world unless we deal with it.
Well, as I said before, it's not only leaving it to them; it's a way it's affecting us as we speak. It's affecting what we do every year. Patty, oh my gosh, I lost my thought for a second. The MOU, the two things there that to me stand out that we need clarification on. He's talking about a referendum, which is a silly idea unless we know what we're voting on. And I'm glad he's talking about an independent review. But the two things that I see as problematic, after all I've read and heard, would be is there an escalator clause or not? Is it a firm escalator clause? Dave Vardy and others say it's not. And the fixed terms that we have for so long, 50 years, 70 years, and all this stuff, if that was reduced, and if we had clarity on do we have an escalator clause or not, it seems to me that would clear up a lot of the confusion. How hard can it be to get those two things out to the public in a very clear manner?
Depends on who you listen to. People are using 2.7 cents or the pathway to 2.7 versus the pathway to 5.9. But no matter how you slice that particular onion, there is. So we can have the debate or the argument about 2.7, 5.9, but it is not a fixed price. And if you look at the impact of inflation and net present value, all those, I mean, it's in the MOU. I mean, people feel free to read it. I know not everybody has the time or patience to want to dig into it, but some of the questions people have, which I do find remarkable. Look, it's a busy life, it's a busy world, but I have people ask me questions and then give me very strong opinions about this particular MOU. And if I simply ask a question, and not to be saucy, but did you read it? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. So, I mean, if you're really concerned, which we all should be at some level of severity, just read it. And then maybe we can all have a conversation on the heels of it.
Patty, you've said that before. If I read it, and I have looked at a couple of sections. If I read it, and I'm more confused than ever, Dave Vardy, Michael Wilson, Uncle Gnarly, and a dozen others, Gabe Gregory, they spend their time at this. What chance have I got to understand? I would rather go to people like that who've got no real axe to grind, who understand it and have said, Danny Williams was another, and have said there is no strong escalator clause or no escalator clause, period. So I'm not going to get my question answered by going in and reading the same thing as they're reading and having less understanding. So you've got two sides who are supposed to know all about this.
Yeah, but that's just a matter of picking a side, though, Charlie. That's a matter of picking a side.
I'm sorry?
That's just simply a matter of picking a side. So, I would make the counter argument for the purpose of conversation that if you want to adhere to or abide by or believe in what Mr. Wilson, who has been on every name you just mentioned, they've been on this program, if the counter question was, why wouldn't someone believe Carl Smith or Jennifer Williams or wherever? That's why I suggest reading it. For me, the most important part about it for me was if I hadn't read it, I wouldn't be able to ask anybody any sort of sensible question about it at all, whether it be Jennifer Williams or Michael Wilson. That was the background for me reading it.
When you read it, can you answer me the question, what I asked about escalator clause?
I did
Do
already.
we have one? Do we clearly have one or not?
Yes, I've already answered that question, which I also extended to say that we'll be told in some corners that it's 2.7 cents versus 5.9 cents. But the base answer to is there one, then the answer is yes. Is it what it needs to be to reflect it for market elasticity into the future, the change of the water and the beans with renewables or alternatives? That becomes a much more tricky question. But I can only say this so many times before I run out of steam. I read it so that I could talk to people about it, as opposed to sit here, not know anything about it, and just basically open up a bully pulpit with no conversation. So that's the reason why I read it, because if I didn't, how could I sit here and interview Jennifer Williams or Michael Wilson or Danny Williams or Carl Smith or Fury or Hogan or Wakeham or anybody else? So I had no choice but to read it.
You couldn't do it because that's part of your job, and you would have to do that, and I understand that. I'm saying, as a lay person, I will listen to Jennifer Williams, and that I was at the beginning. I was all for this. I will listen to the other side, and then I'll make up my mind who's being accurate. But what I'm saying is, when you get two sets of experts with two sets of opinions, there's no hope for the public to vote that is clarified that you can have a referendum. Now, that's what I'm hoping the independent review will clear up.
I hope so, too.
So if I was dealing with these people as you are, I would definitely have to read it, yes, and you do ask good questions. I'm saying most of the people in Newfoundland will do what I'm doing and listen to both sides. That's all I'm saying.
And look, I get that sentiment, which I've echoed many times here, but it's also the starting point for me to think out loud that a referendum becomes a bad idea. Because even before this independent review, I don't think there's going to be much in the way of minds being changed at this point, which is why it was a problem and a mistake. On the heels of the press conference at the Rooms, the press conference the next day should have been, here is our independent review organization, of which, who cares, McKinsey and Company, Rothschild and Co., like whoever. If there had to be someone announced to abide by the LeBlanc recommendation, the conversation would be different today, because now people get their minds made up. That's how the world works. If you believe something to be true now, for the vast majority of people, it's impossible to change that worldview, regardless of what we're talking about, which is why I generally lean in on, and it's not about one side or other is lying, but if you hear something and you believe it to be true, for a lot of people, there's no talking them out of it, regardless of what we're talking about. So that's why I have said since day one, if there's a review to be done, it has to start now. And here we are. Minds are made up.
All these people that I'm quoting who are having trouble with it, they all read the MOU. William said he read it, he was sick of it. I'm sure Dave Vardy did, and Gabe Gregory, and they have serious questions. And when you listen to the other side, you're not really getting clear answers. So this independent review is so necessary so we can get this third party who's arbitrating these two views.
My point,
anyway,
Charlie, is that at this moment, a referendum, regardless of independent review or not, minds are made up. That's it. So referendum sounds like a terrible idea to me. Like when I read my social media chains and or my email, if the references are pretty strictly, and I mean, I'm not talking about Wilson and Williams and Vardy and Sullivan and Wells and others. I'm talking about the general Joe and Jane who will be eligible to vote. If they just say shag Quebec or shag the Liberals, that's not a vote based on anything but shag the Liberals or shag Quebec, which is why we entertain the conversations with folks who are in the room and the Wilsons of the world, because it's a different conversation. So I'm going to lean in on it. Look, I get in trouble all the time for saying a referendum is a bad idea, but I think it is. Do I think an independent review is a good idea? Of course I do.
Well, on the referendum, it's a bad idea at this point. I think if we're going to have it, and I would agree it's a bad idea anyway, but if we're going to have it, let's have it based on something else, and this is where the independent review comes in. But in the end, I would vote against the referendum. Put it that way. Patty, just a couple of more quick things
Very
on
quickly.
the heat pump.
Yep.
On the heat pumps there, we had one installed about 15 years ago. There's some cowboys out there. This guy was really good, put it in, it's worked okay. He said, if you get sales from other people and refer them to me, I will give you $50. And then I learned later he promised other people that, and he never came through for anybody. And when you try to reach the guy, I was going to get the thing cleaned out and that, he won't get back to you. So they're all there to put it in, but sometimes, so I would get someone, and up front I would ask them for something written down rather than just promises.
Yeah, fair enough.
I guess I can leave it at that.
I appreciate the time, Charlie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And just a quick shout out to the folks who continually to send me links to stories that I just don't care about. Notably, things like whether or not Justin Trudeau is romantically involved with Katy Perry. I mean, you should see some of these emails saying, why are you afraid to talk about that? I'm not afraid to talk about it, is that I don't care about it. And I'm not so sure how many people with busy lives and minds actually care whether or not two consenting adults are having a romantic relationship. I don't care. I mean, I've got 5 dozen emails from, say, 10 or 12 email addresses saying, why am I afraid to talk about Justin Trudeau's relationship with Katy Perry? And they get to vote in the referendum. Let's take a break. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Walter, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you, sir?
Best kind, you?
No, I'm very good, thank you.
Good.
I'll be very quick, Patty. I wanted to give you a call this morning. You took a phone call 3 or 4 weeks ago from a gentleman in central Newfoundland who was looking to get a bit of independence back by taking possession of a motorized mobility device / a wheelchair. So I heard the call, and I called him right away and let him know that just in my little role at the hub and the great work that Tom Babcock does there, and we were going to try to track down a good unit for him so that he could get back, doing his day-to-day activities. Spoke to him this morning. We managed through the jigs and reels. Tom, a very generous donation came in of almost a brand new unit, and it was delivered yesterday to Grand Falls to this gentleman. He called me this morning. He's already scooting around in it and loves it. And his exact words, I think, were, thank God for open line, because you took his call. So I said, I'll give a call, let him know that you have it. And it's a good result, a very good result. I just wanted to call and say thank you to you for taking his call, because we love to lend assistance, and we can't do it unless we know about it. So I just want to say thank you very much. Well,
I'm glad it happened the way it did, Walter. I appreciate the update. I'm glad he's scooting around in his new to him wheelchair.
Thank you for your time, Patty. All the best.
Happy to do it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's keep going, Laird. Line number 2. Janine, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty. How are you?
Okay, thanks.
I'm calling today with not a new subject, about the lack of student assistance in the school systems. So this is day 2 that I've received a call from my daughter's school saying that there's no student assistant available to replace the one that's off sick. I made a post on Facebook, as most of us do at this day and age, and this has happened yesterday. 5 different schools in our Avalon system that kids who are in alternate curriculum or alternate transportation have been told that there's no student assistance for those children to go to school. I mean, this is not new. This is not a new, I don't know why NAPE is not doing anything about this. I don't know why NL Schools is still not approaching this problem. There's 23 listings for jobs in the Avalon for student assistant positions that aren't being filled at wages for $24 to $26 an hour. Why aren't they even noticing that this is a problem? What's going on, and why is this still a problem? Disability is not new. Kids going to school with disabilities aren't new. Supports aren't new. It's extremely frustrating that we are still doing this in 2025.
Is it ever? It's not new. In some form and fashion, governments have recognized the fact that they see and they hear and they understand it's a problem. But not a whole lot gets done. It's even continuity. If I'm in grade 4 and I have a specific need that requires a student assistant, I move on to grade 5 in the exact same school. My parents have just talked to the vice principal and the principal in August. I go back to school and my support's not there. Maybe it's a bit more complicated than I give it credit for hiring people, retaining them long term. But I hear these stories so often. Number one, it's heartbreaking. Number two, it's infuriating.
Absolutely. And here I am. My daughter's in high school, and so she's not new to the system. She's in high school, so she's needed supports for 15 years. So this isn't new for her. And it's, so here I am getting a call at 8 o'clock in the morning saying that, apparently it was put on the Smart Find system, and it goes on the Smart Find system, from my knowledge, till 10 o'clock at night, and then it goes again from 6 to 8 in the morning. And so my question is, and here I am, NAEP. These are your representatives. Student assistants are under the terms of NAEP. Are NAEP not looking at the fact, okay, is there an on-call list of people that just aren't being called in anymore that's inactive? Is that why they're not hiring more people, because the list looks like it's full? Is this why there's positions? I mean, people are crying, saying there's no work. There's 23 positions in the Avalon alone for student assistants at $24 to $26 an hour. Why is no one looking at the fact, why aren't these positions being filled? Like, why is the schools not looking, like the school, and all schools? So yesterday, I actually sent an email to, to the Minister of Education and the Minister responsible for the status of persons with disability, which is the same person, Bernard Davis. I sent an email to Jerry Earl at NAEP. I sent an email to Support Service Student Programming Specialist at NL Schools. I even sent an email to Tony Wakeham. I've gotten zero response. I've gotten zero replies. I understand people are busy. It could take a couple days to respond. But I'm also being told every morning that my child does not have the proper support after 15 years to go to school for the last 2 days.
Curiously, in the queue right behind you, Janine, is Dale Lamb, the president at the NLTA. We'll start the conversation with Dale with this exact subject, because it's not just about you and your daughter. This would have an impact on dozens or hundreds of families right across the province.
And with the right supports in school for our children who need the supports, it takes the burden off of the teachers as well that are in the schools. I mean, so 100%. It's all part and partial. And teachers can't get on the school buses with the students. It's not in their collective agreement. If anything happens to students or to teachers getting on those buses, they're responsible, because it's not in their collective agreement to take the positions of the student assistants. Yeah,
it's a part of collective bargaining. And on top of that, even in the classroom itself, a student without the required supports has an impact on every single student in that classroom and the teacher and the other assistants. It just does.
And my daughter is a wheelchair user and an epileptic, so she needs that support. She needs the support on the bus. She needs the support in school. So if they don't have the people replacing the alternate transportation on the buses, who's replacing the SAs that are in school that are off? So that means the schools are still short the student assistants, and they're still short the student assistants on the alternate transportation for these kids.
Yeah, points understood and taken, Janine. I'm glad you brought him up before we speak with Dale Lamb. Thanks for doing this. Keep me in the loop.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Pleasure. Bye-bye. I'll just take a break for Dale Lamb, the NLTA president. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the president at the NLTA. That's Dale Lamb. Dale, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Great today. How about you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good man. Let's go right to Janine's call, because calling as a concerned mother, we all understand, obviously, but just paint the picture for what that complication means for a teacher in the classroom. My assertion is, if one student doesn't have the required support, then that has an impact on every other student, every other teacher, every other assistant that might be present in the classroom. You paint us a picture of what that circumstance looks like in a classroom.
in the classroom, Patty. I mean, it's a lot of work on the teachers. Like, teachers need to cover off these things. And what I will say about Janine's call, she was very thorough. She had excellent actions there, contacting the MHAs, the current Minister of Education, working through NAEP for their suggestions, going through NL schools in her case. They're all excellent actions. As parents, that's what's needed. And then from there, government needs to look at their recruitment efforts for student assistance. And of course, that's the reason that we're having this conversation today. I'd be remiss if I didn't offer congratulations to our Premier-elect Wakeham and the PC party on forming the new government. But just like you referenced, there are things that need to be addressed, and we're going to be looking for commitment to our new government to education to lessen some of the issues that are, taking over in the classroom so that teachers can't educate. It really does complicate the classroom dynamic, and we're going to be looking to government to make sure that classroom dynamic is improved so that our teachers can work with what they need to work with regarding curriculum and caring for these children.
Yeah. We talk about these things sometimes really high level, which I think is beneficial to the listener because they're not working in the system, or maybe they're not working in the system. So let's dig in a little bit to, some very specific questions you'll be putting to Premier Designate Wakeham and or the eventual Minister of Education, as opposed to, we need this. Let's dig into what this means.
And for us, I was disappointed in the lack of focus that the political parties did offer to education in a spoken format during the election. But we do have we did get a platform document from Premier-elect Wakeham, and they looked at improving working conditions, reducing our class sizes, tackling school violence. So that commitment was stated. Looking at hiring more teachers, classroom supports to reduce the class sizes, because class size and complexity and complications, that's what's taking over in a lot of our classrooms. Looking at improving students' access to school psychologists, looking at teaching units that are no longer split beyond half time. So these are the things that were promised. Looking at the action plan to address online harassment and aggression towards educators. Teachers shouldn't be encountering aggressive posts on social media or aggressive emails. It just complicates and makes things more complex for how they deliver their job. And then to review the education, of course, sit down with teachers and the NLTA to examine the recommendations, and then to allow us to provide input into how the chosen recommendations move forward in the classroom setting.
Yeah, and one thing, look, I know governments have to transition, there has to be selection of cabinet, people have to get sworn in, people have to be familiarized with the content that they're looking at. But what we need to do, and I'll do it for you, time is of the essence here. This can't be a wait till the summer, put in the grunt work, hopefully things are improved by September, because that's just another school year with folks with exceptionalities, whether it be gifted or in need of additional support, fall through another academic year crack. So time is so important here.
And you're absolutely right there, Patty. Time is of the essence. We are in a school year, and our year, of course, looks different from the calendar year. So any moment in education is an important moment. So government needs to transition the education portfolio quickly, because issues are happening every day, and we need to be prepared for that. So government needs to lead that and make statements and commitments as to how the future of education is going to look for the province, because the future is right now and moving forward. We need to know exactly what the plan is in order to improve our education system and to get students to be more engaged, and to support the parents like Janine, who were on earlier, to make sure that their children with needs and exceptionalities, that they receive the care that they deserve.
Yeah, 100%. Quick one, because so many things in education are dovetailed, right? Academic outcomes can go back to absenteeism, chronically or otherwise, violence, lack of supports, all those types of things. In the world of violence, we kind of talked about hiring assistants to act like hall monitors, but that's not a pragmatic approach to curbing violence or dealing with violence in the schools. Any other suggestions than what we've heard in the past?
government's going to need to get creative in how the resources that are actually given for teachers need to be deployed. And, they're going to have to think outside the box. They're going to have to look at other jurisdictions in order to determine what's going to address students, who are dysregulated, students who are exhibiting violent behavior. And that's going to be a lot of work on the part of government. So they're going to need to show commitment through their work and through how they move forward and put plans in place. But resources are very important, Patty, and how those resources are deployed, that's what we need to be focused on. Not just give more, but also how is the more going to be operationalized in our system. And once again, the PC Party have committed to consultation with our Teachers Association and with our educators in order to put plans in place to elicit more success for these students.
Yeah, their success is collectively our success. I'm almost worn out, putting to the same things here. And it is a bit dismaying that we didn't have a bit more of a focus on the campaign trail about education. Whether or not, it's a vote getter. But let's think about it. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 66,000 kids enrolled in K-12 this year in our province's schools, which means at minimum 50,000 families. So, and in addition to that, 50,000 representing 540,000 people living in the province. We are talking about our ultimate goals of successes and viability, prosperity, and societal issues to be dealt with. My God, if we don't think that can happen in school, then we're kidding ourselves.
Yeah, and you are right, Patty. There was definitely a missed opportunity on the part of the leaders to speak to that in a candid fashion. But now that government is elected and now that transition will take place, that commitment needs to come through in their actions. We can't look at the past, we can't look at the campaigns and what they didn't do, but we do need to keep this focus, and I appreciate you keeping the focus on education because, like you said, it is the foundation to how we move forward.
Yeah, and let's hope that we can see some pragmatic, positive change. Academic outcomes are not where we need it to be. I mean, just look at the rate of folks in their adult years who aren't functionally literate, whether it be reading and writing and arithmetic or otherwise, and that's hurting us as well. To add to that is just the worst idea I've ever heard of. Dale, as always, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Patty. You have a wonderful day.
You too. It's Dale Lamb, President at the NLTA. Let's get a break, and when we come back, we're talking CET, MRI, whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 3. Yolanda, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Great today. Thank you. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing okay, thanks. I have, I guess, kind of a public service announcement for other people. I've been dealing with, I guess, CT scans and MRIs for the last couple of years, probably more than some people because my partner's had cancer and we've been dealing with that. And also for myself. So for myself, I've had to get an MRI once a year, followed by an appointment with a specialist for a condition that I basically got to be watched for forever. So first problem with, and he has to get CT scans followed up every 6 months right now. So the first problem is the requisitions. So the doctor sends the requisition or the specialist sends it to the booking department. I'd like to say this is an isolated event, but this has happened now for the last 2 years, and I now call every time because for the last CT scan for my partner, for example, 3 requisitions had to be sent. They keep getting lost. No appointments booked. Then the appointment's late. So his follow-up cancer appointment turns out to be late. Then I thought, well, okay, maybe that's an isolated thing. But then my MRI appointment requisition also got lost. 2 requisitions for the last one, which then I got late. And by the time I'd seen the specialist, my MRI hadn't even been read because they were late booking the appointment because it got lost. So that's the first problem.
So quick question, Yolanda. What got lost? I know it's the referral, but
the requisition.
The requisition, pardon me. So is this a faxed requisition or a handwritten requisition? Yes. Which is the problem?
Well, I'm not sure sure exactly how the problem happens, but it is a facts issue because the specialist told me last year when I went in December, and he said, he said, I see you just had your MRI done. I don't have it read, so I don't have anything to go by. He said, I did have a look at it myself, and I think it's okay. He said, but he said, I'll have to get back to you once it's read at some point, which is the wrong way to be doing it because I had already had the appointment with the specialist. That's when you need to discuss if there is an issue. But he told me he thought it was ridiculous that we were still using a fax system for requisitions and that when everything else is going digital. And not that there aren't issues with that, but there's a problem there somewhere. So somewhere there's a disconnect because it's not an isolated event. So that's the first problem. The second problem is, so last week I had an appointment because I think I kicked up so much noise last year about my requisitions being lost. So this year I had my appointment early. So it was Thursday for my MRI, which was great. And I was fasting. I just started fasting for it at 7:30 in the evening. And then I got a call saying, sorry, your appointment is now canceled due to an emergency. Don't worry. We'll call you back and we'll rebook it. So don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. So that was on Thursday. So Friday was fine. Monday was the holiday. So Tuesday I said, okay, I'm going to call to make sure because I haven't heard anything. And even though that wasn't very long, I'm already tainted with the whole requisition thing. So I called and I got a lady who was clearly overburdened with calls, which is unfortunate. And you could tell by the tone, which is fine. And then I told her I was checking on an MRI reappointment. And she said, no, you're a no-show, so you don't get another one. You'll have to go back to your doctor and get another requisition and get it. I'm like, hold on. No, I'm not a no-show. I was called and told that my appointment was canceled due to emergency and that they would call me back. She said, well, that's not what's here on file. I said, I understand what you're reading. But I said, I am telling you I was not a no-show. And so she said, well, I'll have to call over. Do you know who you were talking to? And I'm like, no, just someone from the Janeway MRI department. So anyway, she puts me on hold for about 10 minutes and comes back, and you can tell she was very annoyed. Not with me necessarily, but with the procedure. I don't know why they did that. They're never supposed to do that, write you as a no-show. And then apparently there were multiple people that they did the same thing to that night. So all of these people who think they are getting an appointment rescheduled, well, they might be now because I kicked up such a ruckus on the phone. And then I did get my appointment rebooked yesterday for this following week coming. And I hope the other people did too. But how many people is that happening? And apparently, so caveat to that is that I had to run up to get a blood slip from my partner, get his cancer recheck blood work done yesterday, and I mentioned it to. She asked if he had his CT scan appointment yet. I said no. I said, but I'm working on it. She said, oh my God. And I told her what happened about the at my MRI thing, and she said that's happening to so many patients. I've had so many patients come back to me and say that the same thing's happening, and then they're telling them that there's no shows and they need new requisitions. So we have a serious problem there.
We do. I mean, things like that on such important life and death matters can't get lost in shrugs of shoulders. And I'm not suggesting everyone you spoke to just shrug their shoulders. But in addition to what it's meant to you and appointments and follow-ups, can we just get rid of faxing around referrals and requests and what have you? Look, it's a privacy matter on top of everything else. It can get lost. Someone else can take it as they retrieve their fax, and who knows where that ends up. And someone who might not have any business looking at my medical-related files can just pick it up off a fax machine and read it. There's so many things wrong with it. I mean, we can digitize our medical records, but we can't have electronic trail of requisitions? I mean, come on.
No, there's something completely wrong. And then, so every single test now, every single CT scan, everything, I have to call every single time to make sure. And then if I didn't, I'm not joking, very literally he would have been dead because we would have missed so many appointments. Chemo being canceled, waiting on a waiting list for chemo. It's going to be 3 to 4 months because we're backlogged after Christmas. Cancer doesn't wait. You can't be backlogged after Christmas for a chemo at home training process, which means a nurse goes in and reads through a leaflet and gives you a hazardous kit to take home with you. That's what the training is. All these people need their chemo. You can't wait 4 months. Of course, some people can't wait. It would have made a difference in my partner's survival or not survival. Absolutely, because he was like a millimeter away from this tumor being embedded in something. If we had waited, could have been a totally different outcome. There's so many wrong things. We can't let that happen. And these tests are critical. They're critical.
Obviously so. It's just such an antiquated system, which leads to these exact problems, and it should never be the case in 2025. Yolanda, anything else you want to say about that this morning?
No, the only thing I'd like to follow up with is I understand that this can happen and is, human error, and there's lots of, it's busy and that kind of thing. However, this has been happening now for at least 2 years for me. So this is a problem that they know is happening. Someone needs to address it a little quicker, and there must be a way to track what's happening. Is it an internal memo saying, hey, if you have to cancel an appointment for an emergency, then please don't write this down as a no-show, because it's not a no-show. Please make sure it's pending so that they get an additional or another appointment. It can't be rocket science. I understand there has to be a way to do it.
No, I mean, if it's a cancellation for a legitimate reason, you can't be pushed to the back of the line. And in this case, it doesn't feel like rocket science. They're trying to make it rocket surgery, and it needn't be.
Yes.
Yolanda, good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I mean, that kind of stuff, right? Before we get to the break, let's go to line number 4. Alex, you're on the air.
Very pleasant morning to you.
You too.
Thank you. I was a little embarrassed to make this call, but I tried the SPCA. Maybe they can direct me to the right people. I couldn't get them on the line. Saved me life. I gave up. I said, okay, you know what? But Open Line's been a wonderful support service for us, and I just am mystified as to what they did and what it is. It might sound odd, but the girlfriend moved out in the country. She's on the Avalon, but way outside of the cities in the country. Beautiful, surrounded by woods. And to our amazement and pleasure and amusement, we seem to have adopted a whole lot of wild critters.
Cute.
Squirrels. We got like a village of squirrels living in the backyard. I don't know. There's all different colors of squirrels. I don't know where they would have come from. And an awful lot of little birds are all obviously here because it's very likely the previous tenant who passed away, I believe, and relinquished that obligation and responsibility. Once you take it on, I think they were feeding them and nurturing them, and so I think we've adopted them all. And I tried Googling it. I thought, well, I don't know what to feed them or how much to feed them or what to do for them, the bird, anything. And that became so confusing and mystifying. I really would love to be able to contact people who actually know what they're talking about.
So what's the question?
Right? What? So, well, we don't know what to do for them. Like I thought, well, we assumed that we should have taken over responsibility to feed them and nurture them, but there's quite a lot of them, and we don't know what to do for them. I don't know who to appeal to be able to tell me, well, we know, and we can guide you through it, and we were happy to help you. Here's what you do.
Just one second, Alex. Just 1 second. Is the question, what should you or should you not feed squirrels?
Well, the thing is, I tried Googling that. It became so confusing it's incomprehensible. So the bottom line with all the little birds and the squirrels is that maybe there are some organizations, I assume probably some social groups who know all about this and can guide us through. And yeah, you want to help them. Here's what you do. But we don't know who to call. I'm lost.
Okay, well, I do. Let me jump in here. What you don't feed them is bread. What you don't feed them is dairy products or junk food or processed food. But a squirrel, I mean, a carrot, an apple, nuts, pecans and walnuts and stuff like that. So anything that's not bread, dairy, or processed, you can probably feed a squirrel. So I'd start with carrots and apples and just pick a nut that's not salted.
I picked up a certain amount of that off the internet rapidly, and so we elected, the best thing we could find locally was a big bag of bird feed, which had a whole bunch of stuff. But
I would stay away from birdseed. You know why? Because the rats love it. The rats love the seed. I'd put out that stuff in very small portions and kind of just stand close enough to eyeball them actually eating it. Because if you put out an abundance or whatever for your little gang of squirrels, before long it's another gang of rodents. So that's personally, that's what I would do. We feed squirrels around our house as well, and generally it's grapes or carrots or apple, and not a whole lot of it.
Okay, I noticed they eat the green shoots off the end of the pine trees and everything here.
Sure.
And that's obviously part of their natural required diet. So we don't want to restrict, we don't want to stop that, but I want to make sure they're obviously used to being taken care of here. So we want to step up to the plate and do the right thing. So thanks very much for that info. Are there any groups who... I know there are bird lover groups who take pictures and take care of birds, and are there groups who would be involved with we're feeding the birds here too, and the number one concern was stray cats. I thought, I can't get them used to being fed there in a little bowl on the ground because the cats will kill them. So we're trying to figure out how to deal with all the wildlife.
And Alex, I'll also throw in there, there is a little bit of don't feed wild animals kind of period stuff, but I mean, I think animals like squirrels, they are pretty self-sufficient in and of themselves. It's not like don't feed the bears, because the problem with don't feed the bears is if they become used to having been fed by humans, next thing you know, you can't get the bears out of your backyard. But I mean, squirrel, I just give them a little bit because I think it's cute, but there is a school of thought about not feeding wild animals, because then all of a sudden they need you and the girlfriend to feed them. But I'm happy enough to feed them a little couple of pieces of apple with no peel on it. No big deal. I got to get going, but enjoy the feeding.
Thanks very much for your help, and you have a beautiful day.
You too, Alex. All the best. Okay, bye-bye. When we come back, Darrell Hines in the queue. He ran, albeit unsuccessfully, in the voting district of Mount Sion. He's there, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Darrell Hines. You're on the air.
Well, good morning, Paddy. Thanks for taking the call. I just wanted to call in and quickly say thank you to the residents of Mount Sion. First time running and had a great experience. I mean, not successful, obviously, but I really enjoyed the experience and getting around and saying hello to, hundreds and thousands of people. And I can't thank my family enough and my supporters. I had, hundreds of people help me out, and my family who stood by me for the last 2 months. And it wasn't always great days, and when things are going well and things are not going so well and everything else. So I really appreciate all their love and support, and I certainly offer congratulations to Sarah, who's returned, and I wish her well, even though she's going to transition to opposition to continue to serve our community. And I congratulate Laura Bell. I mean, the NDP had a good showing, and I knew if there was vote split, that would certainly hurt our chances, and that's exactly what happened. But look, the people have spoken, and the people are always right, and I regret, St. John's in the district, I hope to play a senior role, or I had hoped to play a senior role in Tony Wakeham's new government, but full marks to the Conservative campaign around the island. I mean, we weren't successful in St. John's and Mount Pearl area, but it was a tremendous success and a majority government.
Yeah. I don't know about the what went wrong type of conversations, especially when we're talking about a party that actually secured a majority government. But any thoughts on the rural-urban successes of one party or another? Because I don't think it's it's not a trend that's not exemplified elsewhere, because it is. It's kind of moving in that direction. Any thoughts on what we see election night result with the Tory success outside of Northeast Avalon versus in?
Well, look, knocking doors, I certainly sensed there was an appetite for change because of, the crime and healthcare and, other stories. But, it just didn't get out to the ballot box. Paddy, there was polls here in Mount Sion that less than 10 people voted. So, unless people are going to get out and mark their X and vote with their feet and vote for change, it's just not going to happen. And certainly in rural areas, there seemed to be more an appetite and frustration for a change away from the Liberal Party, a change away from the incumbents. But in, St. John's and the greater Avalon, I mean, it certainly wasn't. I mean, Paul Lynn, a very successful politician and a tremendous grassroots guy, and, just on the other side of the highway in Paradise, next to where I ran, I mean, had a very close race. Only won by 100 votes. So, I mean, obviously, that appetite for change didn't resonate in St. John's. Not exactly sure why. I mean, I think in my own case, there was a low turnout. The vote split with the NDP. If people are not happy with government and they have multiple places to park their vote, that don't help one party necessarily or the other. So that didn't help. But I guess in the coming days there'll probably be some analysis done, and other people have some thoughts. But I just wanted to call because, like I say, it's my first time running. I really enjoyed it, and I couldn't have thanked my family enough and my supporters, and people have reached out before and since. I mean, I ran as hard as I could, and I ran the best campaign I could, but it was just sometimes in politics it's just not meant to be, and I think that's purely the situation here. And again, congratulations to Sarah and Laura Bell, who both ran good campaigns.
Yeah, and look, and congratulations to everyone who took a swing at it. Campaigning, even if it's a shortened-ish campaign of 28 days, it takes the good out of you, I would think. I've never campaigned for anything, but I can only imagine the effort put in to try to secure office. Darrell, appreciate this, and thanks for making time for the program this morning.
And thanks very much for the time.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's roll here. Line number 4. Barb, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. I live in a cabin setting too, and I have some squirrels around. And what I usually feed them is peanut butter.
Fair enough.
Take it, put it on the trees or branches and things like that. And also, I have a lot of birds, and I finally figured out they love Cheerios.
Do they?
Yeah, Cheerios peanut butter seems to work pretty good. It's a bit cheap on the budget.
I kind of stay away from anything processed, to be honest with you, because I was one of those as a kid, a hot dog bun that's got a bit of mold on it, that's what I'm feeding the duck, just to find out that's a terrible idea. So I just go with, like I mentioned, a couple of little pieces of apple with no peel on it, a couple of little chunks of carrot, a couple of little walnuts or hazelnuts or something. That's about it for me, but fair enough.
Yeah, and shelled peanuts are good too.
Yeah, give them a little bit of something to do.
Yeah, right on.
Thanks for the call, Barb.
Right on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Yeah, it's like a little activity hour, right? You got to work for your supper. There's no free lunch around here, squirrel. Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the leader of the NDP, successfully re-elected in St. John's Centre, Jim Dinn. Jim, you're on the air.
Thank you, Patty. Thanks for having me. It's the start of a whole new term, I guess. But I do want to congratulate Tony on his victory and being the premier-elect. I did reach out to him on the election night, but it's an opportunity here to publicly congratulate him on that victory, and to also congratulate my political opponents in the district, Ben Duggan and Gemma Hickey, for taking on the task of running. It's not an easy job to put yourself up as a candidate. That I can attest to. So more power to them and to all candidates, regardless of political stripe, who stepped up to the plate. It's not an easy task.
No, it is not. First off, congratulations. Where would you like to go?
I just want, first of all, I do want to say a big thank you to the volunteers and our campaign team, to my wife Michelle, my family, and to the constituents who in St. John's Centre who voted for me. Deeply appreciated, deeply humbled for the support, and I get a commitment to all the residents of my district that I will continue to work on behalf of everyone, regardless of whether they voted for me or not. I represent all the people of St. John's Centre, and that's something I'm going to continue. I'm also glad to have St. John's East Kitty Vitty back in the fold, and to have Sheila O'Leary join me in the House of Assembly. It's a bittersweet because we won't have Shazia Razi join us in our caucus representing Labrador West, but I can guarantee you that I'll still be in touch with them and with Jordan as well to make sure that we still are committed to the issues that were raised by Labrador West and by Jordan when he was my colleague in our caucus. Yeah, and that's the start. I don't know if you have any questions. I'll certainly leave it to you to run the rest of the conversation.
Sure. And I'm not entirely sure how to ask this one, but I'll give it my best shot. So I know 2 is better than 1. 2 is double 1 with Sheila getting back in. But I've heard in certain corners that, the way that you and the party and Sheila have reacted to this sort of speaks to the strength or lack thereof of the NDP if we're so boisterous over 2 people getting elected out of 40 in the House of Assembly. Your thoughts, Jim?
I have to look at a couple of things, and I understand that's a fair question. We look at 2 is better than 1 for sure. As I said, I would have preferred to have 3. I would have preferred to have more than that. We're hoping to pick up more. We did put forward a costed platform that early on, and we put that out there in the name of transparency and to show that here's a plan and here's how we're going to approach this. We had 40 good candidates who stepped up to the plate. From our point of view here is that we did give the positives that we gave a candidate, an NDP candidate in every district to people who wanted to vote. I know I've spoken to a number of the candidates, regardless of whether they're going to win or lose, and some knew that they were up in an uphill battle. They were committed to start the process of rebuilding. They're energized by it. So I'm looking at here is this is while it's easy to focus on the downside of it, the fact is we got candidates who are far from being discouraged. They're now energized and they want to run again. They want to build up the district associations. They're already looking at getting together the volunteers in their district and organizing for the next one. So I have to, as a leader, I have to take an awful lot of comfort and encouragement in that despite that, people are still committed and they're proud of the fact that we were able to offer that costed platform, which no other party was able to offer, and that we the other criticism we put to bed is that we were able to get 40 candidates in these districts, some of whom were it was their first time, young women candidates who took that step, and that's to me that's encouraging.
Well, and I think in years past, and I've had this conversation, if a party's unable to field a full slate of candidates, then people will, whether it's appropriate or not, will just think, well, how serious can they be? So filling 40 slots, I think, is certainly a positive step in the right direction, even if some of those candidates might not have made a big impression in the district and or from the district. It does take a certain amount of gumption to take a swing at it, regardless of the effort put in or the likelihood of winning.
Listen, that it does, especially in districts that are not traditionally NDP, and that they're either going to swing back between Liberal and PC. It does, and I can, the people I visited, like I know I look in Shazia, Sarah Hillier in Springdale. I look at Jasmine Paul, Melanie Alton, all new to this and put their foot. I would say more than dip their toes into it, they put their feet into it, and they gave their best. So that, to me, I got to look at that. That's the future of the party, and that's what we build on. And there's obviously an interest, and it was always a challenge, I guess, getting people to run, but we were able to do it this time. And now we've got the work to do that. Like, we know what the PCs have put forward, but we've also got a costed platform and we're definitely going to be looking at issues along the lines whether it's I heard you earlier today talking about the fractional units in education. If we want to address the issues in our education system, that's one way of doing it, about ending corporate and union donations so that we have an election that's owned by the people of the province, demanding now that where the previous government didn't, but hopefully this one will, to bring in pharmacare to sign on to that, and to address issues like climate change. We saw what happened this summer, and this is a foretaste of what's to come. But it's not just the fires. It was the lack of water. It was the low water levels in all areas. It was the poor yields by farmers. I think, Paddy, when you've got farmers saying, look, asking people not to buy the bales of hay for decoration, it speaks to the issues we've got here. So I think I can safely say it will not be a surprise as to the issues we're going to be pushing in the House of Assembly. It's there for all to see throughout the election, and we're committed to pushing those issues over the next 4 years.
Appreciate the time, Jim. Congratulations once again.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Jim Dinn, leader of the NDP, also successful in being re-elected in St. John Centre. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Patrick Collins. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you today?
Not too bad at all. You?
Good, thank you. The reason why I'm calling in, Patty, is to let people know that the Accessible Bay Museum is once again hosting their historical haunted hike, leaving from the old cathedral in Harbour Grace at 7:30 tomorrow night. It's an annual thing. It's our fundraiser, and we'll awake from the dead the Undertaker Art Rogers, who will emerge from the church, and he'll be walking around the town, fairly close by the church itself, calling on the spirits who are upset with the town and upset where they've been, and so everybody's welcome. It starts tomorrow night at 7:30, and it's $10 at the gate. So we have quite a number of characters that will be called out. William Donnelly, of course, who was buried along with his family underneath the old church. He was there until about 10 years ago when he was removed from the crypt, him and his grandchildren. And we think he's a bit upset with the fact that he gave all this money to the church, and here he has been pulled out, and we think he's probably going to be a little bit angry. And we have a visit back now from a young priest who died halfway through Mass, and we know that he has appeared at several places in the church. Some workers have seen him and so on, construction workers. So quite a number of characters that are going to be called upon, Patty. I think people will either be scared or will enjoy it, or maybe both.
I've heard reaction from folks who went last year after we had our annual call, and they had a great time. Really enjoyed it, and it was a combination of entertaining and a couple of little spooky moments as well, which is exactly how it's designed.
Well, we have a whole. That's true. Harbour Grace is really blessed like that because we have a great history, a great depth of history, over the last number of centuries, the last 3 centuries, and going from east. And then Amelia Earhart, for example, who was taken from us a few months ago and, of course, just found. But, she's got to be upset. Rumors are that she's going to be walking around wondering why that she was chopped up like she was. And, you had Peter Easton, for example, such a breadth of history, like going from Easton up until recent times with Earhart. So you never know who's going to pop out of one of those old houses tomorrow night, and everybody be welcome. And hopefully the weather will hold off, and if it's like it is today, tomorrow night, if it's like it is, same as today, then we're going to go ahead. It'll just make it a bit spookier for everybody, Pat. Yeah.
Hopefully it's a great time again. Thanks for telling us about it, Patrick.
And thank you very much for the airtime to talk about it. Have a good day.
You too, sir. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Here we go. The annual tradition that is. Let's take a break. When we come back, Michael's in the queue to talk about a documentary about Afghanistan, and then we're talking addictions, and then maybe some time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Take it more to the re-elected member from Mount Pearl Southlands, independent member Paul Lane. Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Not bad at all. Thanks for asking. And before we get into it, I'm going to sneak this call and one more on this morning, so let's get at it. Go ahead.
Yes, well, Patty, I did want to, my topic was addictions. Before I do, I just want to say thank you to everyone that supported me during the campaign, and certainly all of my volunteers, my family as well. Patty, as I said, I wanted to speak about the issue of addictions. It continues to be a huge issue in our province. I know we have the Vita Nova facility now up on the Salmon line. They're doing tremendous work. It's very unfortunate, though, that from what I can gather, there's still no decision made or to have this service covered by MCP. I do think addictions is a health issue for sure, and we can put we can cover this stuff under MCP to try to beat the addictions, or if not, we're only going to be paying for it, whether it be through the healthcare system or through the justice system down the road, because of the impacts of addictions. We know that I'm hearing from people, certainly in my community, Mount Pearl is no different than the rest of the province. We're hearing issues about drug houses that are existing around the community. We're hearing about people finding used syringes on the walking trails, in the area of playgrounds and so on. Crime is up, as we know, and a lot of this stuff is related to drugs and drug addiction. And unless we get a grip on this and we support facilities like Vita Nova to try to get people clean, and of course, once they are clean, support appropriate resources and housing and so on to keep them clean, as opposed to taking someone, getting them clean, then throwing them in a shelter somewhere where they're around people who are doing drugs. We really need to get this right from a financial point of view, and from a moral point of view, and from a community safety point of view.
Of course. And there's a lot of ways to tackle this particular issue. Vita Nova is a good complement to a system that needs more beds. And they also have a model that I think we should talk about a bit more, between reducing time between detox and rehab, and then supportive housing as you try to fully recover from an addiction, because we just have a really disconnected world out there at this moment in time in the province. So, yes, there's more to be said on that particular front, simply because I don't want to leave Michael Purdy, who wants to talk about a documentary about Afghanistan, leave him in alert chair this morning. How about we revisit whatever you want to talk about next week when we have more time, Paul?
Not a problem, Patty. All the very best. And again, thank you to everyone who supported me. Goodbye.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. Let's go to line number 3. Michael, you're on the air. Dave, is Michael's pot up on 3? Michael, you're on the air. Michael Purdy, line number 3. Okay, I'll put him on hold. Dave, if you want to see if you can get him sorted out, possibly. I just read an email out of the corner of my eye about one thing that the NDP put back out on the front burner and stuck with it. And I wonder whether or not the current elected government, the PCs under Premier Designate Tony Wakeham, will take it upon themselves to have a careful review of how we finance campaigns in this province. It's just not great. It makes life easier for the parties, but that's not my worry. It makes it easier for the politicians running or the candidates running, but that's not really my concern either, to be honest with you, because every single time I sit in this chair and there's been a big government contract let, big or small, people ask who donated to that party, who donated to this person, or who donated to the Premier. We've got to get rid of it. We've just got to shore it up. And the NDP, to their credit, put that out there in pretty stern fashion. And they're right, as far as I'm concerned. Let's go to line number 4. Michael Purdy, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hi there. Now we got you.
Okay, great. So there's this Saturday at the Gower Street Theater, there is a documentary by Karen Stoic and Robert Curran about fallen heroes, their journey home. It's a 90-minute documentary about the Canadian Armed Forces in Afghanistan. It touches upon some key battles, highlights, and the war's impact on Canadians. And a lot of it is going to talk about the repatriation of those who were killed over there. So it's going to be a bit of a trigger warning for vets, I think. I've sent you the applicate or the brochure. And the interesting thing about Afghanistan is there was 159 soldiers and 4 civilians that lost their lives over there, and 13 of them were ours. They were from Newfoundland. So it's only $25. All the proceeds go back into the Soldier On Fund, and they are the Soldier On Fund and the History Matters of History go to support veterans and educational materials such as this about the war in Afghanistan.
And I'm glad we made time to ensure you got on here this morning, Michael. I mean, the military deaths are, of course, extraordinarily sad, and repatriation ceremonies are enough to break your heart. But, I mean, there was a journalist killed, a diplomat killed, aid workers killed. I mean, it's a big, broad story, and I'm glad they're also being recognized.
Yeah, and it talks about all of them. And I know Karen personally. I met her last May in Italy. She was leading a tour about the PPCLI, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, and I went over because I served with that unit. But I also did a lot of research in the 166th Regiment from Newfoundland, the Field Artillery Regiment, and she took the time out to do detours for us to go visit sites where they fought and the different cemeteries where Newfoundlanders are buried over there. So she's a good person. Her heart's in the right place, and I think this is going to be an amazing documentary. If you go to Trail of the Caribou on Facebook, there's more details, and there's a clip you can watch. So hopefully we'll get the 170 seats sold out. There are still some left. And you can do that by the QR code I sent you, or contact the Gower Theatre, and they can sell you a ticket.
And if anybody wants that copy of that poster and the QR code, if they send me an email, I'll be happy to forward it along. Michael, I really appreciate making time for the program this morning.
Yeah, and it's on the Facebook page as well, Trail of the Caribou Facebook page, the poster. Thank you very much for taking my call, sir. Interesting conversations. We have an interesting 4 years ahead of us. Hopefully we can all get along.
Interesting is one way to put it.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, another good show today. Big thanks to all hands, the listeners, callers, emailers, tweeters. You're all right. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.